get harder, right? So that's king and pawn versus king and pawn versus king, attacking king in front two. It's not giving me a check mark because I didn't complete the king and queen endgame at the end. All right. Here's a nice little puzzle for you. This is just going to teach you to be careful and pay attention and just approach every king and pawn endgame and every endgame in general as its own position. Okay? Because you've got like principles like we've got the opposition that you're starting to work with, right? We've got the opposition. We've got them having to give way. Our goal is to gain control of one of these squares in order to queen one of these pawns. So you're starting to understand like the goals and the tools that you have to get those goals, Zugzwang. But you need to apply that. You need to apply those once you have them. Okay? And every position requires, in chess, pretty much requires you to do some original thinking. Right? Even the king and two rooks against king endgame that we did, where it's one rook takes a row, then the next, then the next, and the next, you still had to notice when the king was too close to your rook that you can't continue rolling and you have to go to the other side to get enough space from the opposing king to favor the rook to fight against him. So you need to pay attention in any endgame and treat it sort of like an original interesting position and look at the details. All right, so three of you are correctly saying that the way to win this is to sack the h-pawn with h8 queen. But a lot of people would try to win this by defending this pawn, right? And then if the black king has to come back, you now make progress, right? He retreated. He was in Zugzwang. He went to a worse square, right? So now we play king f6. And unfortunately, we have put him in an amazing Zugzwang where there's no good move to play for his king. But unfortunately, chess has this bad rule of stalemate, which makes so many positions that you should win into draws. And it says that if the opponent has no move to play that's legal, if any move they would have to play would have to, like, you know, lose their own king, like all three of these, then the game's actually a draw instead of white winning. Even though it's logically inconsistent, right? I mean, in this position, we've trapped the king, and you're allowed to win by Zugzwang in every single endgame except this one, where like the black king should be forced to come here and get eaten. But that's the rule of chess, so king f6 is a blunder, and this doesn't win for white, even though the black king is trapped. The problem here is we need the black king to go to g8, and we play king f6 and g7, right? That's how we need to force the king out from our pawn. That's how we need to Zugzwang him. But as long as this pawn is on h7, it's taking away the g8 square. And without the g8 square, the black king is vulnerable to being stalemated. So the correct answer is to throw away this. And after black takes it, you can come to h6 or f6. Either one is going to do it. I'm going to come here to keep him on the side of the board to checkmate him faster. And now g7, taking away those squares. He was forced to step out. And our king gets through. We get a queen. And I'm just going to chase him down so that chess.com knows that I've done this. Once your king gets to bishop 3, you always have a checkmate. Here there's 1, 2, or 3 checkmates in 1. There we go. Another one down. And it's very satisfying to get these check marks on these, right? I mean, even I, who know all these endgames and put most of them in here. I don't know all of them, actually. There's some I don't know. But even I, who know almost all of these and chose and selected and put them in here, it's just a great feeling to see some check marks appearing on these, right? So you may have scoffed at learning the king into rook against king position for some of you who are advanced. But why not go put a checkmate, put a little check mark on your checkmate? Feels good. All right. So let's go here. In 4-player, a single bishop checkmates. I don't know that opening theory. That's interesting. All right. So let's do another one of these. Maybe I want to jump ahead and do one really hard one before it gets too late. All right. So this position here, it looks very hard to make progress for white. If you think about it, though, if black had to move, things could get worse for black. For example, if they had, well, I sort of need an analysis board to show it, I guess. All right, let's pull up analysis right away. Oh, but I'm not going to be able to move for black to show it. Okay, whatever. I'll play it first. It's so much easier to do as black. All right, I'm going to live chess for a second to show you this. All right, setup. It's pretty easy to get to from what we had before. All right. We'll say black to move because that's what I want to show you. All right, so if it were black to move, they would actually have to do something to worsen their king position, right? Because white would have the opposition. Their king is optimally keeping white from advancing his king or maybe his pawn. So if we're black, we would have to back up or give space in some way. So for example, here, if we step aside, the pawn can come through. And now we can't stop this pawn with our king anymore. And this just queens. All right, so alternatively, we could step back. White steps forward. Again, we have to give ground. So we could play like here. And now, how do I want to do this? I think I want to shove the black king into the corner. We keep forcing him into worse and worse positions. And then c6 should do it. So if the king comes back, we can check here and queen or rook. And if black takes it, actually we can take or come here. But I'm just going to come here, let it go, and do that. So finally, black could drop the king back here. And now I believe, let me see. Now I believe we are going to want to take diagonal opposition to make progress here. King e6. So now the king has to either come back here or come here. If he comes back here, then we're making progress like you saw before, pushing him into the corner. And if he comes here, we'll go to d6, get this opposition, force him this way, and then push him back in again, transposing to what we saw before. Okay, so if king c8, we get something called the diagonal opposition, similar to the normal opposition, and it's allowing us to then continue to zugzwang the opponent and push them back. So, getting back to this with the with it being white to move. Oh, sorry, I want the black king here. And I want it to be white to move now. All right. So now, let's see if we're white, how we can get this position and make black step back. The first thing to realize is that c6 check does not actually work. And this you have to analyze for a moment to understand, but you might think you're super clever when you calculate the following variation. And you are. You are. It is very clever. If you calculate this variation here, that after black takes your pawn sacrifice, you just move your king here. His king has to now give way. Then you take this pawn with opposition. He comes here, you push, he comes here, and you come here and you win. You are mighty clever if you saw that. I 100% agree. Very, very nice. Unfortunately, this move would completely spoil your win because black king just drops back to c8. And with the king on c8, there's actually no way to win because, as you can imagine, if we put this pawn on c7, because it's taking away squares from the king, we have no way to approach him without causing stalemate now, right? Like anything we do to try and improve our position, right, to try and take away squares from him and push him into like a tough spot, is stalemate. So we can't bring the pawn to c7. And if we go king d6, Then black's going to play king b8. Still, anytime we play c7, they come here to c8, right? So we can't play c7. We also can't take on b7 because anytime you take on b7, their king can just hold this pawn. We can't ever get around and take control of those squares. So, with the king on b8, there's not really much left to do, right? If we play king here, black can now take it because now the tempi worked that they just play king c8, b7, king here, draw. It doesn't work out. All right. I recommend, if that's new to you, that you try calculating that from this position. It's a very, very excellent practice or exercise for you to do if you want to get better at this stuff. Just imagine those variations with c6. First, imagine how if black takes, they actually lose to king c5, king c8, king c6. Play out that king and pawn versus king thing. And then look at c6 check, king c8. And see how black sort of plays that drawing variation in your head. It's very, very good because if you haven't analyzed those kind of positions several times, when you get to a position with, like, you know, a pawn in the sixth and you're trying to say, like, is it a win or a draw, you just won't have that comfort and that practice of having analyzed it a bunch of times. So you definitely want to calculate a few variations around this pawn on the sixth king and pawn position so that you have that practice with calculating these lines, and it'll allow you to solve something like this. All right, let's go make sure we really know it by playing it against the drill computer, right? So we're going to back up. Oh, did I show you how to lose a move yet and win this yet? No, I didn't. I only showed you what does and doesn't work, right? I showed you that if black has to back up, we win. I showed you that c6 doesn't yet work for white. So now I'm going to show you how to get this triangle thing that they were talking about, so that we can get this position with black to move and then make progress from there. So first I'm going to back up, and basically every move works for this. All right, so they come to c8. So now I want to make progress on this file, but if I come to d5, they can play king d7 and block me. You guys want to try and guess the right moves for white in this in the chat? It could be a very good exercise for you all. So basically, my opponent has moved to the side. What I want to do is flank them and threaten to advance up the board and get control of these squares here that I want. Right? So I'm going to try and flank them by playing king to e5. Now, when they move back to this file, right, I can take the opposition. And the computer's going to play the obviously bad defensive running away and letting us win. So I'm going to go back to live chess and show you some more variations. All right, so king d4, king c8, perfectly good defense. King e5. Now they should play king d7 maybe instead of d8, but we'll play king d5 and take this opposition. If they play king e7, then we can immediately go c6, like we've seen before. And if they back up, we can come forward, and do this thing, which hopefully you're starting to get comfortable with, right? So king d4, king c8, king e5, king d7, king d5. We've got the same position that we looked at a moment ago with black to move, which is going to force a concession since black's in Zugzwang. King d4, they could also play king c6. We come over here, keeping this pawn defended. And now the black king has to back up, right? If we were on the back row, this would already be sort of like a stalemate, right? But here he's got one square he can go to. Unfortunately, our pawns taking squares away from him forces him to go to a certain square, and then we can take opposition again. Force him into Zugzwang and start to make progress. Keep that diagonal opposition. And win like this. Okay. Note that if the black king could go to d6 here, they could maintain the opposition, and we couldn't make progress with white. This pawn covers d6, so that makes it illegal. So they can't do it. But if I turn off legal moves and play king d6 for black, you'll see that white can't really make progress against this black king. We go to c4, he goes to c6. We go to d4, and now he doesn't have to back off. He just comes to d6 illegally, and he just keeps blocking us. We cannot make progress. Okay. So let's put him back here. Turn legal moves back on. All right. So that's the importance. The fact that we control certain squares doesn't allow the black king to maintain the opposition that he has. He eventually gets triangulated. In other words, we go here, here, here. He moved linearly, right? And we moved in a triangle. That allowed us to switch whose move it was into the same position. He made 2 moves, we made 3. That's why it's called triangulation, because the simplest form of it is you do a 3-step while the opponent does a 2-step, and that passes the move to the opponent. Okay? That's why it's called triangulation. Triangulation basically only exists because the opponent's king is missing a square. He can't do the same triangle we did, you see? He can't copy our triangle because there's a square that he's missing, a shortage of liberties somewhere. So having a pawn of yours somewhere that's attacking a square, or having a pawn of his that's in his way somewhere, that kind of thing that takes away a square that they can use, allows you to win even when your opponent has the opposition sometimes by doing a triangulation. They can't maintain the opposition because they're missing a square, and then you're able to make progress. Wasn't king e5 easy? I imagine king e5 is just as easy, right? Every move from white wins as long as you then triangulate and don't go back and forth. So king e5 should work as well from the starting position. Sorry, let's go here. And then let's make it white to move and go back here. Okay, so king e5 should also work because basically every move should work if we know what we're doing. If the king follows us here, it basically wins only because c6 promotes this b pawn. Right? Otherwise, his king goes here, and now you just have to triangulate again, right? You come king d4 defending this, and he goes either to d7 or d5, and in either case, you play king d5 and make progress. Or here, and we've passed the move to him. It's exactly as easy as this triangle. You've just done this triangle here instead, right? e5, d4, d5. It's no worse. They're both completely winning. And I imagine king e4 is just equally winning as well because you just triangulate in a different direction, right? I mean, I've never tried playing king e4, but I imagine that this would also be winning because let's say your opponent goes to c6 or e6, either one, you're going to go to d4. If he wants to maintain that opposition that he had, he has to go to d6 with you. But he can't. So again, he's forced to drop back somewhere, right? And then we make progress. So to resume from the starting position, you can make a triangle here. You can make a triangle there. You can make a triangle here. Any triangle seems to win, right? So hopefully that's cool to know. How to win that one. Just go back over here and finish it just to put a check mark for ourselves. Sorry, I like completing stuff. All right, we're going to use the knight hop away from the king technique with the queen. Every time we get a chance to push him back a row, we do. When he's in the corner, don't do the knight move there. Again, an example of you need to like actually think with whatever you know. If you knight move him here, then you've zugzwanged him to the point where he had no squares, and you've zugzwanged him to the point of stalemate. So when you're winning a game by zugzwang, always realize that you can push the zugzwang too far. Just like any joke, right? It can be funny, but eventually the person you're making the joke about cracks and attacks you, right? You can push anything too far. You can push a zugzwang too far until it's stalemate and then regret it. So let's make sure to not knight space him with our queen when he's in the corner. All right. That chalks one more off of our list. Wait, it's not showing it. Hang on. I just got it. There we go. There's that check mark. Yes. You can't see the full board? Oh, shoot. I didn't switch the view back to drill. I'm sorry. Crummy David. I've got 4 different window views, and sometimes I mess it up. Sorry about that. Camp was super fun. Nickel VM. I went. I had a great time. So yeah, it was kind of like my first step back of like teaching, really. Since I've started this little like comeback, I'd mostly just been training myself. People were watching if they learned something cool, which they seem to do. But I was just, studying and learning and training myself, getting my own head back. And camp was kind of like my first time just sort of like teaching a lesson. And then today is the first time sort of streaming a lesson for everybody. So it was a lot of fun. Were there a lot of under 1200s? No. There was a 1400 to 1600 group and a 1700 to 2100 group. But no reason there couldn't be an under 1200 group in the future. If that's the group that you would want to be in or that you would fit in, sign up. If there isn't enough people, we're not going to take your money. And if there are, then we'll prepare something for that group. I think Kostya and Jesse were wanting to do a camp once a month right now. So there'll probably be another camp in a couple weeks, in 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. All right. So let's leave these drills here for now. I think we got through like 6 of them in a day. Not bad. We'll do another batch later. If any of these were positions that you didn't know, go and like train them again and again. That's one of the cool things about these is you can train them multiple times, right? I mean, you can just go back and just start it again. I guess I'll try and mess it up once to show you guys how you can practice. Oops, I stalemate my own king. It tells me e3 is a blunder down here. Thank you. That's useful to know. And now you see I can't get my king past the opponent's king. Wherever I go, he blocks. I can never make it his move in this position for him to step out of my way. And if I ever push, then my king can't get in front of my pawn anymore. And now the only way I can get Zugzwangs are going to be, again, what we talked about before, right? Too much Zugzwang, pushing it too far. We're forced to stalemate the opponent's king instead of forcing him to step out from the pawn. Hey, Puka Bear. That's great. Welcome. Today we covered a bunch of things that are good for somebody who's new to chess. I don't know if you were here for the first hour and a half, but you can always watch the VOD, and I'm probably going to split up this video and put these over on YouTube so you can watch them, and we learned how to checkmate with king and queen, how to checkmate with 2 rooks, how to checkmate with 1 rook, how to win with a pawn on the 6th. Here, let me redo this, making my point that you can just redo it after you get it wrong, right? Now I'm going to come up and do it correctly. When I get the opposition, I'm not going to spend a move on my e-pawn. I'm almost scared to click near him, right? I'm going to flank again, going up the board, take the opposition again. Move my pawn up 2 steps. Go here, take control of the squares that I need to queen. And here we go. So we trained some of these king and pawn endings. We trained the king and queen checkmate. Here it is again for you. Got the king trapped on the side. Bring the king to bishop 3. Checkmate. Trained a bunch of these fundamental things. If any of these are not evident to you, practice them a few times. Like if I didn't know how to do this drill, if I'd gotten it wrong once like I just did on purpose before, and then I got it right this time, I wouldn't be like, yes, I got the one that I got wrong right. I'm done. I passed it on to the next. I would do it like 3 more times to make sure that I really had it. And then if it's taking me like 10 minutes to figure out the moves, I would keep doing it until I could do it in like 2 minutes, till I could do it faster, till I really owned it and could do it quickly. That's kind of the point of it. The drills are supposed to be things that it's valuable to repeat and repeat and repeat. And I think and hope that these are. Okay?